I've often said I spent 10 years of my life in corporate America. I worked for a number of different large health insurance companies, and I never felt comfortable then. Like I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I did a tour of duty with them before I went to the corporate world, and then I lasted 10 years and I jumped around 3 times because I'm just like they would be exhausted by my level of quick start, right? If you look at my Colby, I'm exhausted by the new innovations and creative ideas. Like, Mark, we don't do that here. I'm like, well, then I don't belong here. So I often say I'm not employeeable, right? It's not employable. It's employeeable. All right. So I think when you're an entrepreneur, part of the reason you like to be an entrepreneur is because you like to create your own rules for the game you're playing. And one, I know you know this, or the community we're in, that we're playing with a lot of what I would call elite athletes, right? If I'm crossing over into sport, there are elite athletes in this room. You can't be an average performer and be sitting in that room. I don't just mean from business performance either. I mean in all aspects of life, right? Because as coaches taught us, Dan always talks about the 4 freedoms. I talk about 5 because I bring in spirituality as my 5th dimension, right? But time, money, purpose, relationships, and spirituality. Those are the 5 freedoms that every one of us in that room are working on in some shape or form. So to me, it's, you're right. I don't like rules. I don't like rules that hamper improvement. Right. So if there are rules just because this is the way we've always done it, I have always hated that answer. When I was in corporate America, Ben, it used to frustrate. Well, Mark, we don't do it here. We've never done it here that way. I'm like, I know. That's why you are where you are. And I'm trying to paint a pathway of where we can get to so it'll be a better end result for the customer. But then it becomes more about protecting the structure than it is about doing what's the next best thing for the people that you're trying to serve, which is where my head always goes.
Yeah. I'm curious. I didn't know about that you grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it shocks me, even without knowing that you were able even to last 10 years in a corporate environment. But bring me back to your childhood.
So my mom was a cardiac rehabilitation nurse. My dad was an orthopedic sports medicine physical therapist. They're both Ivy League educated. My mom went to Yale. My dad went to Columbia. I didn't go to Ivy League school. I didn't have the grades to go to Ivy League school. But I've also experienced more business success than they've ever experienced because I'm an entrepreneur, which is something they introduced me to because my mom and dad didn't like the corporate practice of medicine. They just knew it didn't serve the people. And so my dad created, with my mom's help, an outpatient physical therapy management company. And so we had 6 facilities in 3 different states. My dad's model was he would find a lead orthopedic surgeon in a market. He would find a community hospital that was willing to partner and collaborate. He then would find 9 other orthopedic surgeons who were willing to invest capital. And then he'd find a hospital who was willing to invest capital. And then he'd create a multi-million-dollar, 25% profitability per year, physical therapy clinic that made money, but it also delivered very high clinical quality, like his outcomes. My dad was all about your ankle's busted and you used to be a tennis player. I'm going to get you back on the tennis court. He had professional athletes that lived with us. So I had a couple of NFL football players when I was growing up. And these guys are huge, live with us. So my dad would rehab. I've had guys who were NFL snappers snapping me a football. You want to talk about a football coming out like a bullet. I mean, it would literally knock me over how fast these guys would chuck the football. But I remember my dad, the reason he got those players to work with him is because he was all about outcome. Like, how am I going to get you back to doing what you were doing and actually make you better, stronger than what you were? And my mom would do the same thing with anyone who had a heart attack. Like, once you have a heart attack and you've had your chest cracked, like, how are you going to get back to living your life normally again? And that was her whole thing, is we're going to get you better from not only once your surgery's done, but now how do you reacclimate to being somebody with a heart, a new heart or an operated on heart? And how do you adjust your lifestyle so that you can re-enter the world? So my parents were all about outcomes and clinical. I wasn't science-based though, yeah. I was good at math, really good at math. And I like the business of healthcare because it's complicated. And I tend to like to simplify things. You know, you're either a simplifier or a multiplier. I'm a simplifier. Um, and so they introduced me to a lot of those concepts. I worked for my dad and as a PT technician. I used to scrub whirlpools and put hot packs on people and cold packs and, help my dad in any way I could while I was in high school. And then when I got out of school, my parents hired me to come in, and I went in through the accounting door, Ben, which people are always like, "What, Mark? You were in accounting?" I'm like, yes. So my thought there was, I knew someday I would be an entrepreneur. At least I believed I would be. And I wanted to make sure that I knew how to prepare a financial statement and read one so no one could steal from me. And so I did that with my mom and dad. I was the payroll clerk. I was the AP clerk. I was the accounts receivable clerk. I became the assistant controller, then the controller, and we had 18 sets of books every month, every quarter, every year. And I learned the business of healthcare, and I learned how to prepare a financial statement. And I actually didn't really like the work then. If I'm being completely honest, I was bored to tears with accounting. Then I learned that about myself, though. Like, I don't like looking backwards. And that's what accounting is. It's accounting for what already happened. I was a finance major, right? So it's like taking the accounting, which you need, that's the grounding, right? And then how do we make $1.05? How do we make $1.10? That's where my mind leaned to. So my dad ultimately started getting me into business development, and that's how I crossed into sales. And then when a law changed that really disrupted his business model, I left him and my mom. They retired, and I went to go work for insurance companies. So I'm like, you know what? I'd rather go see where the checks are written than where you wait to receive the check. Because again, my parents would render health care to you if you came in, right? And then they'd have to wait at the time 90 days to 120 days to get paid. Really, really hard way to run your business when your cash is sitting on your balance sheet and on your bank account. And then that's when I crossed over into corporate America saying, hey, I got to go see what this is all about.
What's interesting, it was like your parents was the undergraduate. Like you learned, hey, what's it feel like to receive it? You go work for the insurance companies. That's like your graduate PhD work of like your research project. And then you launch out into the world and creating great impact, which we'll get to in a second here. As I'm listening to your story, Mark, you talk about being principle based. And now I'm starting to understand a little bit more where this is coming from. Principle one, be heart driven leader. Two, always be about growth. Three, it's all about the outcomes. I mean, this is coming from your parents, right? I mean, you got to front row seat to watching this, whether they actually articulated that in a way, but I mean, how's that land for you? I mean, do you feel like that's where you picked that up?
I think your discernment of what I just told you about who I am is accurately framed. I don't know if I really thought about it that way, in terms of what I witnessed with my parents. But when I think about it, I watched them have to make a lot of hard decisions, right? Well, there were times when the three of us couldn't get paid. We had to make payroll. And my dad would sit down and talk to me and say, Mark, we can't take a check. We're going to have to wait a couple of weeks. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, because we had to pay all our employees. I'm like, okay. So I learned what it's like not to make payroll and then not to be able to pay yourself, and the choices and the trade-offs and the challenges of all the relationships and the complicated way in which healthcare is delivered. And I learned a lot about, my parents would put me in a room then and just I always say they let me swim. And if I looked like I was going to go under, they'd throw me a life raft, right? But they let me swim at 24, 25, 26 years old. I mean, when you're just a kid, you don't know anything. But I always sat at the adult table. So my mom always called me a little old man, like an old soul. I always wanted to be around the adults. I never wanted to be around the kids unless we were doing something athletic and fun, right? I never just wanted to sit there and not have a meaningful conversation. I like to listen at the adult table. I like to learn things. My brain is always kind of like, I just have a thirst for growth. So I think the way you framed me is an accurate representation of who I am.
How do you think that your parents giving you the trust to swim impacted you, and how do you see that not necessarily in today's society with parents and kids?
Yeah, I think with a lot of parents today, they're helicopter parents. They're trying to take the learning away from their children. And I don't, for me as a father of three, my kids are all now graduated college and all working, and they're entrepreneurial too. For me, it was always about, how can I teach them the things in life without having them fly off the road, right? I often look at myself as a parent as a guardrail on the highway of life. You're going to bang into the guardrail. You are. You're going to have accidents on the road. You're just going to. But I don't want you flying off the road and then disappearing from the earth, right? So I feel like that's my job, is to be that person that stops you from doing that if I can. And a lot of people they don't have that luck. Something happened to their kids and they don't have them around. And I know that life is very precious. So if I can help my children be successful, but not take away the lessons they learn along the way. And it's hard, Ben. I'll say that with my daughters. I'm probably a little bit more forgiving than I was on my son. I give them a lot more latitude to lean into me and support in life than I did with my son. And, I would acknowledge that. It's not that I made it easy for them, but I certainly would give them more grace than I would give my son, because, I remember my son turning 18. He's like, "I'm a man now, Dad." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're 18 years old." "Well, when do I become a man, Dad?" I'm like, "When you're paying every one of your own bills, then you can call yourself a man." He's like, "Really? That's the benchmark?" I'm like, "For your dad, it is. When you're living completely free of me and you don't need any resources from me, then I'll call you a man." He's like, "Okay." So now at 27, he's like, "I'm a grown ass man." I'm like, "Yes, you are." But again, it goes back to principles, right? I always want my kids to do the right thing, and they don't always do the right thing. I think all of us, every now and then, we have a transgression. We are human. But try and give them the grace, and I also remember, and I often quote this, Dean Martin had a quote, right? Dean Martin, the famous actor, said, "You know where wisdom comes from? Experience. Do you know where experience comes from? A lot of bad choices." You don't get the wisdom without getting the experience. And sometimes you do things, right? I'm sure you can think about this in your own life. You do something once, you're like, that was just a fluke. I'm going to do it again. And then it happens again. And you're like, this variable over here. And then you do it a third time. You're like, you know what? I'm just not doing this again, because I'm not going to paint red flags white. I'm just not doing that. And sometimes it's one and done, and you do it and you're like, okay, I'm not touching that again. So I've always said to my kids, by trying things and by developing experiences, you will gain wisdom. And when you gain wisdom, life becomes a lot easier, because you do things that are more helpful to yourself than not.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about AI, right? Because we're quickly transitioning from a knowledge economy, right? You go to school, you memorize, you have a lot of rote sort of like exercises so that you can be the thing that you can punch into the computer, right? How would you advise parents today as we move into this idea economy, right? So I would like you to harken back to like your kind of front row seat to your parents, your experience with your kids, which I love if you kind of shared some of those examples that you allowed your kids to like walk through as a guardrail. But what would you actually tell parents today that, hey, this is a way that will allow your kids to thrive as we move forward?
So what I always told my kids growing up is, when they would say, "Dad, I have to go to college. And then when I go to college, so I can get a job." And I'm like, "Well, you don't need a job." They're like, "What? What do you mean I don't need a job?" I'm like, "Well, I don't mean you're not going to work. I just mean you don't need a job." They're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you could think of something that society needs. You can create value for people who need that. And then you can charge people for that value. And so most days it won't feel like work." And they're like, "Well, what's that?" I'm like, "That's called being an entrepreneur. And you'll learn about it as you grow up. But essentially, you're creating your own life, right? You're looking at the world, and you're being aware and curious and alert, and you're developing or creating or co-creating something that will add value to the world. So you don't have to have a job. You can use your innate or your unique ability to actually deliver that value and be paid for the value that you're contributing. So they had to get jobs when they were younger, obviously. And so they did. All three of my kids worked, but they quickly figured out that working and selling your time was not a way in which they could live the lifestyle they'd become accustomed to living with me. Right. And that's a hard reality for your kids when they're in their 20s. I remember when they get out of school, they start to recognize, well, geez, I don't get to stay at the nicest hotels. I don't get to, go to the nice restaurants and eat because I don't have my dad paying the bill. I can't afford that. I got to learn how to cook. I got to learn how to clean. I got to learn how to do whatever it is. But if they're entrepreneurs and they can build a capability, then they can start to earn a better living. And then probably most importantly, be able to pursue those 5 freedoms we were talking about a few moments ago, right? To really look at building a better life for themselves. So I think for me, telling parents today is teach your kids the right principles, right? Because they can learn a skill and they'll find out what they're uniquely gifted at, what they love. I remember my son came to me. He was doing an internship at my employee benefits firm. And all my kids did an internship there. And my son came to me after the first year and he had one more summer to go, like his junior year in high school and then senior year in high school. And he's like, Dad, he goes, I've been dreading having this conversation with you, but I can't do this for a living, Dad. I'm not a white collar guy. I can't do what you do. I don't have any interest. In fact, I hate it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, what? Okay. Like, you're not mad at me? I'm like, why would I be mad at you? He's like, well, I thought if I came and told you I didn't want to do this, like you would be crushed. I'm like, I appreciate the fact that you actually thought about how I might feel, but I'm okay with it. You know why? He's like, why? I go, because you've just eliminated a lot of wasted time doing something that you hate because you were chasing making money when it didn't really speak to you. He's like, no, Dad, I need to have my hands in the dirt. I need to have my hands, on things. I have to work with my hands. I'm like, great. I know a lot of people who are blue collar, who are multimillionaires, plumbers, electricians, builders. Like, you do not have to be sitting in an office with a suit and tie to be successful the way you want to be successful. So I would encourage parents out there to think like that. Try and find out where your kids are uniquely skilled, where they uniquely gravitate to, and then see if there's a way you can encourage them to think creatively about that area they love, whatever it is. And then say, how can you create your own life inside that thing that you love so much?
What I love, Mark, you didn't call it a career. I love how you actually reframed it, your life. Because as an entrepreneur, and I think that I think you resonate with this, is that what I do is not who I am, but who I am is what I want to do. And that's I love your excuse me, I love the story of how you've launched your kids, because you allowed them to have things, but you also allowed them to really struggle in I think deep and meaningful ways, and now they're all thriving.
I would say this, Ben, they struggle less than I did, but that young adulting, as they call it, it's hard for them. It's, my daughter, Brooke, I have twin daughters, and my one daughter, Brooke, suffered from really, and I would say, I want to put this message out there on your podcast, because I know there are a lot of parents all over our great country who are experiencing the pain of not being able to help their son or daughter when they're not mentally right? Because life is really hard, especially with social media. It's brutal. And if you're a girl, it's even more brutal. It's just really, really nasty. And so that can have a big impact on your kids. And in my daughter's case, it did. And, she was borderline suicidal at one point. I know I shared this with you. It was really, really hard a year ago. And, I struggled to find her help. And I'm in the benefits business, right? I'm in the healthcare business. I know the language. I know resources all around me of what to do. And I still felt helpless. I felt, physically challenged for a long time. I thought there was something wrong with my heart. There was. It was called worrying about my daughter, and not being able to sleep and not be able to figure out how am I going to get her to a better spot. And, as luck would have it, made a few good moves to get her some help, encouraged her to actually get that help, which was a really hard thing to do. A lot of times kids get in this place and they just don't want the help. They want it, but they won't take it. And so I essentially had to, I won't say bribe, but I had to financially encourage my daughter by taking care of some things she wanted me to take care of. And I said, I'll do that if you do this. And I got her some help. She got her some help. And that changed her trajectory. And then, as luck would have it, she came back to me, I don't know, a month after being out of the place she went to go get help from. And she met somebody who recruited her to sell health insurance. And she called me and she's like, Dad, what do you think about a career in individual health insurance? And I just started laughing. And she's like, why are you laughing? I'm like, you do know what I do for a living, right? Like, you have been paying attention like all these years. And she's like, yeah, but you sell to big companies with lots of people. I'm talking, and I stopped myself. I'm like, you know what, Brooke? I think that's a fantastic idea because she goes, it's 100% commission job. I'm like, great. That's called being an entrepreneur, 100% commission job. So I think it's fantastic. She's like, do you think I can pass the producer exam? I'm like, you'll crush it. You were a great student in college, but that's not going to help you sell insurance, by the way. But it's what you have to do to get the license to sell insurance. She goes, but then I have to do a role play. Will you do that with me? I'm like, how hard do you want me to be? I've been doing this for like 35 years. She goes, well, be easy first, and then we can make it harder. Anyways, right? So she passed the exam, crushes that. We go through the role playing. She does really well. After the first time, I stopped her and she was done. I'm like, I know you don't know what you're talking about, but you sounded really convincing. And I think this is you. So fast forward the tape. She gets out of her graduating class and there's an annual competition they have who can sell the most health insurance. Individuals bet, not companies, one person at a time. My daughter sold $1.6 million in individual health insurance premium in 1 year. Her closest competitor was $1.1 million. She crushed the field and then sent me a big copy of her bonus check. and the smile on her face from ear to ear, the fact that she was able to win the contest and not even be close, the fact that she's blowing away records in the company. I mean, I'm telling the story because she went from the brink of something horrible to now being able to afford her own car, be able to buy her own place to live, to be able to pay her own bills. And when I ask her, what's your unique ability? She's like, I'm a closer, Dad. I'm like, well, you're half me, so that makes sense. But either way, I just tell the story because I know there are parents out there who are struggling with kids who they can't help. And I am encouraging all those parents to do their absolute best to get help. There is help out there available for people. And it's not just being in the benefits business. Hopefully, for those that are listening, they can talk to their benefit professionals because there are resources. You just have to know where to go to find them and to get help. Because once you do, and then you help your child get to a better spot mentally, and a lot of it has to do with taking away that phone, Ben. I mean, they took that phone away from her for 30 days, and I think that was the thing that helped her pivot to where she is now.
Yeah. I mean, we've had our mutual entrepreneurial friends who have taken phones away from their kids, and it's always met with a little, a lot of resistance. But then at the end of the day, it's almost the kids are almost reticent to get it back.
Yeah, because they know what comes with it. Well, easy access to information, but also some things, if you're not being careful, that can negatively impact your state of mind. And I think, my daughter is now much more comfortable in that. So I have I didn't talk about my daughter, Kelly, but she's also now working for an entrepreneurial woman who created her own company, sold it, and now has developed a new company and now is taking my daughter, Kelly, under her wing to teach her the business. And so all three of my kids now, I feel like they've got, my son with his business, he's in cannabis cultivation in Massachusetts. He's got a multi-million-dollar operation with 12 employees. He's killing it at 27. I mean, I just look at him, I just marvel. I mean, he's got me as his coach, but it's a lot of hard work. And he's doing the work. And then I look at my daughter, Brooke, who I just shared the story with you about. Now my daughter, Kelly, who's now working with an entrepreneur. And I get charged up as a human. I was talking to my wife about this, helping people I love and like enter into the world of entrepreneurialism, because then it's going to give them all these freedoms that you and I already know we have, right? But you don't know until you're in it. You don't know till you cross over into the world what that really means. You just don't. And I know what it means because I'm living in it. And then the chance to bring people I like and love over with me, there's just nothing that gives me better joy than that. Well, maybe a great golf shot. I get tremendous joy out of a great golf shot. But in all seriousness, to be able to help people I love and like to realize their potential, it's very meaningful for me at a spiritual level.
Well, I've always said that entrepreneurship is the greatest form of self-love, the greatest expression of it, and the fact it's belief and confidence in who you are and who you want to be and who you're becoming and how you want that to serve others. And I think that's the thing that people they don't get, that being an entrepreneur isn't about like the successes that you see on Instagram, right? As you're flipping left to right with the cars and the planes and stuff. And those are all things that are natural outcomes. Like if you help enough people, what's the saying? If you help enough people get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. Something along that line.
I think it was maybe Maya Angelou who said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah. So Mark, you've had a front row seat of helping a lot of people launch, and specifically as you're talking about your wife, right? Incredibly successful human being. She's helped build millions of dollars worth of value for others. Why do you feel that people who are maybe listening on this podcast, who maybe are have a business already, but they are not launching the one, right? They have the job business, but they're not launching the life business, or someone who's in the corporate grind, right? Who's listening to this going, man, if I always had this idea, why do you think that people hesitate to show the greatest love to themselves?
Risk and the willingness to take it, or the perception of risk, right? I also used to look at it this way too. Like when I get to this dollar amount in my bank account, then I'll do it. When I get here, then I'll do it. And I just realized that that's what, coach teaches us about living in the gap. There is no there. So you measure progress looking backwards, right? So, but to answer your question directly, it's the willingness to take calculated risk and then to be committed to whatever it is that you want to do. So Eleonora has been a 20-year, employee of a strategic coach. She has done amazing work partnering with Dan Sullivan, who actually said, Ben, and I'll say this on this podcast, he actually put in video to her. I often say there would be without Babs, there's no coach. Well, without Eleonora, there's no free zone. And that's just the truth. It was an idea in his head that she then helped do what she does, which is to take that vision and to activate it into reality. She's uniquely gifted in a way of thoughtfully understanding what it is. And she lives with me. I'm a quick start. I'm a 9, right? She's a 2. So new ideas come naturally to me. For me. For her fact find kicks in and wants to know every detail about it, because then she can help make that vision become reality, right? That's her unique gift. And I've been encouraging her for a long time to do this, even while we were dating. We weren't even married yet. And I just think you're amazingly talented and the entrepreneurial world needs you. There are people like me everywhere who we have great ideas. We just can't when we go back to our worlds, right? Our worlds are taken up by phone calls and emails and texts and meetings and all these other things that we have to do, but they get in the way of advancing a vision that we're really excited about. So this last free zone meeting I went to, I was talking to an entrepreneur. I'll leave his name out of it, but he said to me, I had this great idea and I just was having trouble getting to, actualize it. And I started telling him about what Eleanor was doing. He's like, I got to talk to her because that's exactly what I need. So her whole business model is about understanding what your vision is and then first of all, understanding it so you can clearly articulate it, right? Because sometimes it's not all that clear in your head. It's clear, but not as clear as it needs to be. And then it's communicating it to your team in a way in which they can see what the entrepreneur sees, and then curating the right who's, whether it's that person's team or external or a combination, which is usually what it is, to actually make that vision become reality. And so I think, to your question, I think somebody like her is a gift to the entrepreneurial world, and she'll be her own gift to herself by being her own entrepreneur, right? So she gets to collaborate with people like us who are doing amazing things or want to do amazing things and just don't have the ability to activate those great ideas.
One of my favorite books is Rocket Fuel, right? Visionary integrator. I liken to see what Eleanor's building is. She's the launch pad. She's the structure, organization, or all the fuel lines hooked up. So what would you tell people who are sitting on the sideline right now? Like, what's the Mark principle based? Hey, you need to get off your ass. What's that? What are you saying to them?
The thing I say to people mostly is the most valuable, precious commodity you own is your time. It's the only thing we cannot buy more of. We lose it. Every minute I'm spending here talking to you, you're I wouldn't say losing it. We're both gaining in this conversation, but we're investing it, right? We're investing our time. And I can't manufacture more time, and neither can you. So I've never been one who focuses on retirement. In fact, I remember my very first coach meeting in 2005. I remember Dan saying, do you know what the definition of retirement is? Of course, we all recited what we thought the definition of retirement is. He goes, no, look it up under Webster's. It's to be put out of use. Does anybody in this room want to be put out of use? I'm like, yeah, no, not me. So what I would say to people is the time to act is when you're younger, so that you actually have time you have energy, right, to build the life you want to build. And there'll never be the quote unquote right time to do something. You have to do it when you're ready to do it, right? So some people take a year, some people take 2 years, some people take 5 years. But I would encourage anybody with a great idea to take a step every day. One step. Doesn't have to be 100. One step. So you have a thought in your head. Use a tool to distill that thought and lay out, like, what do I see? Like, think about the guy who invented wheels. Like, I'm traveling today, right? The guy who invented wheels on luggage. I mean, can you come up with anything simpler? But that guy's wealthy beyond belief. The guy who developed Velcro. I mean, to smack things together, right? I'm on my jet ski when I'm on vacation. I got the Velcro around my wrist with the jet ski key. I'm like, the guy who invented Velcro is also uber wealthy. It doesn't need to be a rocket flying to Mars like, Elon Musk. It's not about that. It's where can you do something, find an opportunity that you love to create positive impact in the world. Create something that will make somebody's life easier, better, whatever it might be, and jump, go. So my short answer response is jump.
Oof. Make me want to jump, Mark.
Do it. You already are doing it, Ben. That's why you and I get along well, because you understand what that means, right? I can't even, I think back on my role in corporate America. And I'm like, what the heck was I thinking for 10 years of my life? And unfortunately, I run into my business partner, Jennifer, and, she and I ultimately become great friends. And then she invites me into her world, and boom. I mean, we've 12x the size of the company in the time we've been together. And the impact that's had on my life and everybody around me, it's given me the ability to have a greater impact on life for all the people I love and like, that's the thing that fires me up. I don't care about stuff. I never have cared about stuff. Oh, that's easy for you to say, Mark. You got a house in Florida and you got a nice car you drive. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not wearing baubles either. You're not seeing me in the latest, greatest of everything because that's just not my thing. Right? If I can go play golf, if I can travel with people I love, if I can eat nice meals, if I can have water around me. These are the things that I like to do. Play golf, right? But to me, it's about the quality of life, not the stuff, because we all come in with nothing and we leave with nothing, Ben. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, I think I like that you bring up this idea of people see what you have and they don't actually understand what you've actually done. Now some people could take that comment like I'm saying, Mark, you've worked, 80 hours a week, you had to grind. No, what I want to talk about is this idea of principles and impact. You have been a man on a mission, right? You had your upbringing of the undergraduate of saying, hey, how do people actually receive benefits, right? Not only in terms of the entrepreneur who's actually giving the service, but how do the people who are actually receiving those services, how are they paying for it? Like that whole interaction of the services they're actually receiving. Then you go on to corporate America, and then you get your graduate degree, right? In terms of people who are paying those things. And I think the thing that people don't understand is going back to your comment you said before about the ability to identify the problem, right? You've identified so many problems. You've been this man on a mission. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about where your principles and impact intersect. And I'd like it to be in terms of this culmination of 30 years worth of like just being in the trenches of seeing our healthcare system fail people.
Yeah, I'm now happy to talk about that actually, because it is the thing that means the most to me professionally. I think when you really understand the healthcare system, right? I have lots of friends who work in all the 4 rulemaking entities I'm about to mention to you. So my comments are not directed at people. They are directed at the system that these people live in and promote every day. So the first is government, right? Medicare and Medicaid. That's for Medicare is for people 65 years of age and older. Medicaid is for people who they're on the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder, right? So they don't think of the 10% of people in the world or in our country who need a lot of help, right? They just don't have enough financial resources. But that leaves a big segment in the middle of privately insured Americans, right? Most of whom get their health insurance through their employer, right? Because the United States is an employer-based delivery of healthcare and health insurance. You can buy it individually too, but primarily it's delivered through employers. So you have Medicare and Medicaid. Then you have a big hospital system in every metropolitan area that literally controls roughly 60% of the delivery of healthcare. Then you've got health insurance companies, and there are large ones. I won't name them on your podcast, but there are large health insurance companies. And then you've got prescription benefit managers or access to pharmaceuticals, right? We call them PBMs. So when you look at those 4 rule makers, Medicare, Medicaid, government, health insurers, large hospital systems, and PBMs, those are the 4 rule-making entities that created our American healthcare system. They administer it through an opaque process called coding and billing. So every time you and I go touch the healthcare system, we go to a doctor, we go to drug, we go to a hospital, whatever, a code is assigned, right, to the service that we received, and it's sent over to the insurance company. And the insurance company has an agreement with that place that you got the care. And there's a negotiated discount on the service for the service that you received. And so through that opaque process, says the charge was $300, goes over to XYZ insurance companies with a 50% discount. So it's $150 that Ben has to pay the doctor who he went to go see. I have no problem with that transaction loop, except for the fact that you and I have no idea what that price is before we walk into the doctor's office. We only know after. And there's no other service we buy. None. I've asked everyone that I go to, and I've been to the White House. Name one product or service you buy where you don't have access to the price or quality information before you make a buying decision. And healthcare is the only one. It's not okay with me. It never has been okay with me. Because when you're making a decision without data, you're not making decision from an informed point of view. You're just being steered through the system. So I share that backdrop with you because everything I've ever talked about is first transparency, right? I coined a phrase, I actually trademarked it. Health insurance is expensive because healthcare is expensive. We want to blame the insurance company. They're only one rule maker in this system that I just mentioned to you. So yeah, are they a part of it? For sure. But there are other organizations, other rule makers that I just talked about, right? That promote that type of construct. Fortunately, in 2020, after decades of advocating for this at the federal level, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2020, which President Trump signed into law right before he left office in the first term, was about making healthcare price transparent. So it requires the system now to be transparent, which is the start, right? People would say, "Oh, Mark, just because we say transparency is now a law, is that going to really make healthcare better?" I'm like, no. They're like, transparency doesn't work. I'm like, transparency is not a thing. It's a principle. And then what comes out of it are things that we can use to actually make the principle become alive. So when you ask me to make the connection between principle and practical application, that's what I'm talking about. I'm like, let the technologists come in with all this data, and they can digest that data and then create tools that we as consumers can actually look at the quality and price of providers before we go get that healthcare. And that's happening right now. Those things have been happening now since 2020. There are also these rulemaking entities that are pushing back. They're not following the law, and they're not being held accountable by the Fed. So that's the next wave of this, is now that we have a law, we now need to create some poster children out of it, with people who are like, you're not going to do the right thing. We're going to call you to the carpet because we need you to do the right thing. Now, why do I share this with you? Because I would not know that. I would not look at it as an insurance broker, which is what if you asked me what I did for a living, I would just tell you, Ben, I'm an insurance broker. You'd be like, oh, okay. But that's not really what I am. I just tell you that I am because I know you have a broker box in your head. Instead of trying to describe what I am, I'm like, Ben, just go into that box you have called a broker. Then I want you to find the tiniest, remotest corner in that box you can find. That's where I live. And I'm not a broker. Do I do the things that a broker does? Yes. But I don't really care about selling insurance. Mark, what do you mean? You're a co-owner of an insurance agency with 80 employees. What do you mean you don't care about selling insurance? I'm like, I don't. I care about making healthcare easier and more affordable for people. And insurance is the way in which it's a mechanism for how we make that desire become a reality. So now if I back it up and I say to you, 30 years of doing this, what I just talked to you about, and understanding, because I've been on the provider side, then the payer side, now the consulting side, right? I have a 360-degree view of how healthcare works. And I've said this to you before. I look at it like a casino, right? The house always wins in the casino, always. So what I tell my clients and prospects is, I'm not telling you you're going to beat the casino, but I will tell you you'll lose less and you'll play a lot longer if we follow the platform, right? So we've created a platform that allows employers to actually solve the problem I just shared with you by entering into a community of like-minded employers who want to solve the number 2 challenge they have on their profit and loss statement, known as health insurance expense, right? Employee benefits. If you look at a P&L of any business, the second largest expense behind payroll is benefits. And health insurance drives 80% of that number. There are 50 million people in our country that get their insurance in the middle market. In other words, employers with 50 to 500 employees. And they're the most overcharged segment of the population. And so what we've done is created a platform that allows those 50 million people, and we're not the only ones doing this, there are others in the space, but allow unrelated organizations to actually come together to create scale so that they can take advantage of transparent quality and price, that they can build their healthcare literacy. And by doing that, it leads them and their people to a better cash flow position. So that's what I'm doing with the knowledge in my core business. And then professionally, I'm working through the National Association of Benefits and Insurance Professionals, better known as NABIT, on really shaping the future of healthcare. And what we've done is me and 7 other of my colleagues from across the country, we co-created what we call the American Healthcare Consumer Bill of Rights. And the American Healthcare Consumer Bill of Rights is a Bill of Rights, as you might expect, with 10 articles. And each article, like the right to affordable healthcare, the right to high quality healthcare, the right to affordable medication, the right to emergency care, the right to confidentiality of your information, the right to health equity, right? The right to states' rights. We have all these rights that are inside the Bill of Rights that allows us to talk about the policy to create a new foundation for healthcare versus trying to adjust existing algorithms. The algorithm I just talked to you about. The system does not want to change the structure I just talked to you about because it's profit driven. And I'm not, I'm a capitalist just like you are. I'm okay with people making money. I'm okay with people making a lot of money. I'm not okay with them doing it secretly and quietly and not disclosing the revenue or the compensation they're being paid. That's not okay with me. We need to create a better value proposition for people so they feel like they're getting value from the system. And today, people just talk about their rate increases and they throw their hands up in exasperation. Like, Mark, I can't afford a 15% increase in my health insurance costs. I'm like, I know you can't. Well, what can we do about this? Well, what we're not going to do is do the same thing you've been doing year in, year out, because it's not going to give you a different answer. Middle market companies, what they so often do is what I call the less bad renewal bed. And they do this with their existing brokers. What they do is they tell them that the broker comes in and says, Ben, you're going to get a 17% rate increase, but don't worry, Ben. I'm going to challenge the renewal calculation and I'm going to go out to the market and I'm going to get you something less than 17%. I'm like, okay, Ben. Okay, Mark, I hope you do. That broker goes out to the market. They try to negotiate your renewal. They get competing bids. They come back and they say, Ben, I've got great news for you. We took your 17% down to a 10%. And you're like, 10%? Like, inflation's only like 2.5 to 3, right? CPI historically, 2.5 to 3. You're telling me my rate increase is going to be 3 to 4 times more than inflation, and that's good news? Yeah, because it could have been a 17. This is the cycle that I see employers going through every year. I'm like, are you tired of being on the hamster wheel? If you're tired of being on the hamster wheel and you're tired of paying into the system, how about you come out of the system and we'll build you your own custom community, that makes every dollar you pay visible to you, that discloses the quality of the care your people are getting and you're getting, that looks at data that says, what's going on with your 100 employees, Ben? Like, you don't know, and you don't want to know who, but you'd like to know, do we have a big population that's struggling with mental health? Do we have a big population that's struggling with cancer? Do we have a big population that's struggling with, hips and knees and backs and surgeries like that? What do we have? What's going on with our people? Because once you know what's going on with your people, then you can target solutions to those people, which guess what? Delivers them better outcomes. And when it gets better outcomes, this is where I bring it full circle, what happens? We get lower costs. And we get lower costs, what happens? The employer spends less money, the employee spends less money, and they transform their expense into an asset on their balance sheet. That's what I do.
Well, not only that, Mark, but when your team have incredible outcomes and they're healthier, they're more mobile, is that who they show up as? Let's just not even say at work, but at home in their own lives. Like, I mean, it's a massive ripple effect.
Well, when you look at people, there's an old question that people say, I'll ask it to you, what's your biggest asset you have? People always go to their house. I'm like, no, it's not your house. It's your ability to get up and go to work every day. And if you can't do that, are you protected? Do you have disability insurance? Wow, I don't need that, Mark. I'm like, you're 9 times more likely to be disabled than you are to die. And what happens if you can't make that 300, 400, 500 grand a year? You have no insurance, you have no income. Then what are you going to do? Right? So my point is, it's protecting the most important thing we have, which is why our tagline, Captivated Health tagline, is the greatest wealth is health. Because without health, you have nothing. The wish list of a guy who's sick is what? One thing. The wish list of guys like you and me who are healthy, I got lots of wishes and dreams about stuff I want to do. But if I were sick, I'd have one thing I'd want. Can I get better?
It is so true. Hey, you kind of hinted at this a little bit of some of these things like, hey, let's get into this data. Let's get into let's get the transparency, right? You got the rule makers, you have this Transparency Act, which again is it's that, as you talked about, as anyone's entrepreneurial journey, just take one step each day. This is just that one step in the direction of moving towards these. It's not even a bill of rights; it's a bill of principles.
That's correct.
But talk a little bit about what you're doing now in this space, right? I know you're kind of excited. You're going to be releasing something here in September. You got some technology that's coming down the pipe.
Yes, sir. So I could talk about the book. So we've been operating Captivated Health for over a decade. We're in our 11th year. And Captivated Health, for your listeners, is a captive solution, right? A self-insured captive solution that allows a middle market organization to self-insure its health plan risk, protect itself with stop-loss insurance like really large employers do, and then ultimately reduce costs, not by pulling things away, but by actually solving problems for their people and getting them better access to higher quality care, lower price. So over a decade, we initially created this model. Actually, I want to talk about this for a minute. So this model was created out of our need to serve private schools, right? So we have over 100 private schools as clients, mostly in New England, but in a variety of states across the country. Private independent schools like kindergarten through 12th grade, right? So it's high school or junior high. So we had three organizations that were three collections of schools, one in Maine, one in New Hampshire, and one in Massachusetts. And they were already coming together to purchase their health insurance, but they weren't doing it in a construct that would lead them to what I just talked about a few moments ago. So to make a long story short, I helped them find this structure known as a captive insurance arrangement. And it allows them to enter the world of being partially self-insured and exit the world of being fully insured, where the carriers make all the rules, to where now they get to make the rules, right? They get to be the insurance company. As opposed to buying it from an insurance company, they get to be their own insurance company. And then when they run it the right way, and they have protection, so it's not like you're flying without insurance, you have protection. But when they run it the right way, they actually reduce their claim spend because they're helping people get better care at a lower price point. And so over that decade, we've been able to deliver amazing results. We've helped these schools put in their bank accounts $40 million on their balance sheet. We've lowered their claim costs, so their healthcare costs, from an average of 10 or 11% down to 4 or 5. So cut it in half. I think we can do even more. But we're beating the market in a big way. We have carved out their prescription benefit management, like the PBM, one of the 4 rule makers I talked about. We carved out their prescription benefit management program. None of them could do this on their own, but because we're 30 organizations and 10,000 employee lives, we're able to go out and negotiate our own pharmacy contract. We have negative pharmacy trend right now. No one has negative pharmacy trend, and we do. So lowering the cost without decreasing the access to care. What we've been able to do in Captivated Health needs to be told. And so you're right. I'm actually starting on the book process next week, where I will be drafting or creating a book. It's not meant to be a New York Times bestseller. It'll be about 100 pages in length. The idea behind it is to talk about theory and then show the practical application through a case study and walk through, not unlike what my business partner Jennifer and I did back in 2009 when we authored Bend the Healthcare Trend, which was a book about creating a culture of consumerism, health, and well-being. And at the time, it was talking about health savings accounts, which were very new back then. They're not new anymore. There are 60 million people who have a health savings account now, but back then it was new. And that was a way to get your employees engaged, right, in not only the care they're receiving, but the price of the care that they're receiving. So through that health savings account mechanism, they care. You're basically paying your people to make better decisions, right? Because you're giving them a bank account of money and saying, Ben, I'm going to give you $2,000, manage this $2,000 to pay your deductible expenses. And if you're good about managing that money, then it will roll over and you can build it like a bank account over the years. I've done that personally. I have tens of thousands of dollars in my HSA, which I'll use for my retirement medical expenses. What Captivated Health is going to be about is how do we help the employer leverage the power of the HSA with the employee to then help them become their own insurance company. And as their risk improves with their people, instead of paying the insurance company premium and the insurance company keeping the profit margin, the organization actually gets to keep the profit margin, and they build a balance in their bank account. So to somebody who's not technical, I'll say to a CFO, you're going to create a cash account on your balance sheet, right? A healthcare reserve account. And you're going to create a corresponding liability called incurred but not reported. So IBNR. And when your cash is greater than your liability, that's called surplus. And you get to reinvest that surplus into providing your people with better things. Mark, what do you mean? I'm like, well, John, so I'll give you a real story of one of my CFOs at one of my schools. He called me, he said, Mark, our auditors just left. I'm like, well, that's not the beginning of the good conversation, but tell me what that means. He's like, no, my auditor just left and he told me that I have too much money in my healthcare reserve account and I need to spend some of it. And I just started laughing. And he's like, why are you laughing? I go, because this is not the conversation you and I were having 5 years ago, John. He goes, do you remember that? He's like, yeah, because I was getting ripped off and now that money's going into my bank account. I'm like, right. Okay, so he goes, but seriously, I have a problem. I have too much money. What should I spend it on? I'm like, well, let's see. You take money out of people's paychecks, right? To give them health insurance. He's like, yeah. He goes, I go, how about you decrease that? He's like, no, we did that 2 years ago. He goes, well, we're not doing that again. I'm like, okay. You offer a health savings account. Why don't you put more money in the health savings account for people? He's like, nope, did that last year. Mark, you're not helping me. I'm like, okay, John, let's see. Oh, we did an employee interest survey because we help you build your culture. And one of the questions we asked was if people are interested in other benefits, and your employees actually are very interested in LASIK eye surgery. He goes, yeah, but that's not offered by insurance. I can't pay for that. I'm like, John, you're a self-insured employer. You make the rules about what's covered and not covered within certain guidelines. So you can offer that. He's like, I can? I'm like, yeah, you can adjust your plan document. And he goes, well, what would you set in there? I go, $500 an eye, put it in there and put it in the benefit. He's like, this is great. I get to spend the money, but do it in a way in which I can add value to the benefit plan for my people. Rolled it out, wildly successful. Now, would that have opportunity have presented itself if they weren't in this program? No, because that profit wouldn't have been sitting on the employer's balance sheet. It would have been sitting on the insurance company's balance sheet. So you do that, and what Captivated Health has done is now has a 10-year track record. And it's not just for schools, right? We've rolled this out now for other like-minded industries. We have one we're getting ready to launch for nonprofits. We have one that we're getting ready to launch for engineering firms. The model was built to be replicated by industry. People always say, why do you separate out industry? I'm like, well, different language, right? So schools talk about employees as faculty and staff. Well, you and I don't talk about our employees as faculty and staff. We call them employees or team members or whatever we call them. So the first is language. The second is risk profile. If I look at the risk of schools, they're very similar with who they hire, right? Ages, genders, socioeconomic status, and all those things factor into a risk of a population. And insurance is about managing risk, yeah? And you lower your insurance costs by effectively managing risk, getting people the right help, the right care at the right time, the right place by the right provider. So what we're going to talk about in this book is we're going to talk to employers about what this platform does and if they'd like to be a part of it, for them to self-select, right? Because if I talk to 10 employers, there are probably 8 or 9 who don't want anything to do with this because they perceive it as more work. It's not more work, but they perceive it as more work. And they would rather be the ones who complain about the outcome versus trying to change the outcome. And I don't want to work with those employers. I don't. So we actually have a scorecard. This goes back to my principles, right? We got a scorecard with 8 metrics on it, 8 attributes, and then a score of 1 to 12. And then we score it. And if you don't qualitatively rank a 75% or higher, we're not interested in talking to you about this program because you're not the right mindset. That doesn't mean I won't work with you on other ways. I have other clients who we help with on their own, right? They don't want to be a part of a group purchasing consortium. They would prefer to go it alone, which is fine. But my point is, as it relates to this community, you have to have the right mindset, and then you've got to have the right metrics in place to actually take that risk. And that's what we do in our business. If you're interested, we have to say, well, first, Ben, it's good to know you're interested and you do qualify Mindspace. But let's look at the risk of your group to determine if this makes sense for you financially.
Mark, how did you come to take on what most people would assume is this behemoth, right? I'm listening to you and I'm going, because most people think of health insurance, healthcare. They're like, too big to fail, too big to challenge, just too big. And you know what? I'm a hostage to whatever they tell me. What was it about this that you went, here's a problem, and I'm going to lean into it versus lean away from it?
I think the quote I would use is you have to fall in love with the problem. And I fell in love with the problem. And I've spent my whole professional career learning how the healthcare system works. And then I've spent another part of my career helping my clients navigate that system one at a time. And while it's nice to help one client at a time, it's also nice to be able to create something of scale that gives you negotiating power in the market, and to know that you're not going to be a big aircraft carrier, but you can certainly be a mean destroyer, right? And kind of, move yourself throughout the healthcare landscape if you're smart about the way you're doing it and you've built in the right team and resources to lean into. So I didn't look at the problem like it was overwhelming. I looked at it local. They always say healthcare is local, right? So I looked in my backyard and said, what can we do in our own backyard first? I didn't have national aspirations at first. I do have national aspirations now because it's a 10-year track record. And remember, I talked to you about Dean Martin's quote, wisdom. Well, I've gained a lot of wisdom in those 10 years about what works and what doesn't work, and can share that wisdom and knowledge so that we don't have to go through the pains of pioneering like we did 11 years ago, right? It's a lot different world today with the tools we have than what we had 11 years ago. And it's still evolving. That's one of the things I love about this is, like, what they say, I think the old saying about how do you eat a whale? One bite at a time. So that's the way I've always looked at this. While it's a huge whale, it's in my backyard. It's through relationships that I earn, and then it's through education, like I'm doing with you and your listeners right now, about how it actually works. And most people don't want to know how the watch works. They want to know what time it is. So I'm not always going to describe to people in painstaking detail how it all works. But I think you need to understand, as I said before, the system's built like a casino, so it always wins. You don't have a prayer of winning unless you take control. And without taking control, which comes with responsibility, right, you're never going to get to a better place. You just won't. But you want to press the easy button, you go ahead and do that. It comes with a big price tag.
Yeah. Talk about agency, right? I mean, we see it all over where people are taking agency. And quite frankly, you look at our headlines where people are not taking agency. And for whatever reason, Mark, it just seems it's easier to go to say, here's the problem. Like we have like literally we have a surplus of people who can identify problems.
In my state of Massachusetts, our attorney general's office has authored some amazing papers about what's driving our healthcare costs in Massachusetts. I mean, these papers are world-class, but they're the same thing every year. Here's the problem. It's unit cost pressure. In other words, prices going up, but there's never anything in there about here's how we can solve the problem. And the reason is it becomes very political, because someone or somebodies are going to have to give up pieces of that construct I talked to you about in order for us to make a large scale reduction in price. And no one wants to be that entity or that industry grouping that's taking a haircut. So the system doesn't allows for little tweaks to algorithms, as I say. But what we need is a new foundation to build a new house on top of, because the one we have right now is crumbling.
So how would you advise people in this current environment to escape the velocity, the velocity of those political like pulls in, like the message of whether it's red, blue, or white?
That's where I go back to the NABIP Healthcare Consumer Bill of Rights. It's 10 principles to stand on, and you can listen to what somebody says about their ideas about how to fix it. That's what I'm doing right now, actually, with our association on a national level. I want them all to not only look at the Bill of Rights and understand them, but more importantly, use the scorecard we developed that'll allow you to sit across the table from somebody and say, Ben, I really believe your intentions are solid and with making your area of healthcare more affordable for people. But I don't think you're doing enough work on Article 3 or Article 6. So I'm not saying no to you because I think the intention is a good one. But I think you need to do more work in Article 3 and Article 6. Well, Mark, what are those? I'm glad you asked. Let's walk through that. Now, that does not sound like I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or I'm independent. It sounds like I'm focused on the principle and the fact that you've recommended something that runs against 2 of those 10 principles. So it gives us the chance to be on the high ground, right? I say us, benefits professionals who are talking to CFOs and CEOs and HR leaders about this very subject. And it allows us to elevate the conversation for one that's focused on serving the consumer. Because at the end of the day, employers don't offer this out of the goodness of their heart. They do it because it's expected in the form of compensation, right? You get your salary and your bonus and commissions, but then you have benefits, and the largest benefit is health insurance. Okay, well, you can make that health insurance plan attractive and serve me, or you can just offer it because you just have to offer it. I like working with employers who offer it because they want to, because they know that not only is it a form of compensation, but it's a way in which they can build culture, right? It's a way in which they can take care of their people. Because if I have healthier, happier employees, they're going to be more productive, right? They're going to be more apt to team. They're going to be more apt to collaborate because they're not fighting the system or they're not fighting some healthcare event to save their lives. I'm not saying those situations don't come up because they do, but you'll reduce the number of them. But by doing some of the things you can do to avoid those challenges by taking control. And that's what this solution is all about. It's take control, get access to actionable data, become more healthcare literate, and both at your level, the employer level, and at the employee and family member level. And all that leads to better cash flow position for everybody involved.
And Mark, you just actually outlined, because my next question was going to be, hey, how can people actually, even outside of healthcare, actually develop their principles? And you literally just gave the framework right there. Just take out the word healthcare.
Right. Take control, get data, build your literacy, better cash flow position for everybody involved. It's not unique to healthcare, that's for sure. But you have to be willing to take ownership. Yeah. And a lot of people aren't, Ben, because you know what they say, right? Ownership comes with work. I remember my grandfather when I was a kid, and I've told many people this. My grandfather used to say, Marky, the only time success comes before work is in the dictionary. And I will never, ever forget that as long as I live. Is that not wisdom?
That is wisdom. That is beautiful wisdom. I've never heard that before.
The only time success comes before work is in the dictionary. And by the way, the harder your work, the luckier you'll get. So when people tell you you're lucky, you can say, yeah, I'm lucky. All right. I work my ass off. That's why I'm lucky. Now, I'm not saying there's not luck along the way. I'm sure you've had luck. I've had luck. You meet people randomly. Things happen, break. I look at it like golf. Some days I play golf and the ball does not bounce my way. I'm a foot short between a great shot and I'm in the water, right? That's just life. You hit a bad shot. My first thought in my head is, and I didn't used to be this way, chance to be great. It's the first thing I say to myself after I hit a bad shot. Instead of beating myself up, my chance to be great, Mark, depending on where the ball lies, depending on what the shot looks like, you have a chance to hit an amazing shot. And I'm not saying I always do. If I did, I'd be on the tour. But my point is how you look at it is not to say, woe is me, not to beat yourself up and swear at yourself like I see a lot of people do in the golf course. I'm like, it's hard, man. Just like life. Give yourself some grace and then figure out, you know what? I can recover from this. Yes, you can. Sometimes I have the ugliest pars, Ben. They're just ugly. I'm in the woods, balls bouncing around. For whatever reason, I can hit it out. I can see a shot and I can get up and down and get a par. And the person looks at you like, how the hell did you do that? I'm like, by never quitting. Don't quit.
Right there. Right there. Mark, we got to have you back on. There's a multitude other things I want to touch base on with you, but I want to say thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing so generously. And honestly, I literally have learned a ton of things that I had no idea about as an entrepreneur, as a consumer, and as a service provider of all things like healthcare. But what I love so much today is that it was based off principles, not like just things that are like we all can actually aspire to and actually move to. These principles, the willingness to serve others. I mean, it's these natural outcomes that all of a sudden people go, oh, Mark, you have this place in Florida. You have all these different things. Your kids are successful. They just don't see the things that you've actually done to actually get there. And how you've actually gotten there.
I appreciate that. I really do. It's been great to talk with you. I only wanted to add one more thing, and that was just my opportunity to talk about Beverly's Hearty Slice. It is something that, that's near and dear to my heart. And I shared the story with you a little bit when we were in the green room, but just to share it with your audience in case anybody wants to, look them up. There's an operation called Beverly's Hearty Slice. It's out of Owensboro, Kentucky. And the gentleman who runs the nonprofit, his name's Travis Owsley. And Travis founded Beverly's Hearty Slice when his mother prematurely passed away. And he and I met by chance in an airport in Nashville. And we got to talking to each other as we were waiting for our delayed flight to Boston about his mom's passing and my mom's passing way too young. And so that's how we forged a friendship. And then I learned about his nonprofit, which feeds kids, right? Feeds, clothes, helps kids out, because that's how his mom was when he was a kid. And so he started with pizza and water, just offering pizzas and waters to kids who would show up every week to this place where he'd do it. And so, make a long story short, I got to know Travis 3 or 4 years ago. I've now donated quite a bit of money and my time to his organization because he's doing amazing things with children. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to give back. And Beverly's doesn't have to be the place you give back, but it certainly resonated with me because of its desire, its passion fueled by Travis to actually put food in kids' bellies who don't have it. He was homeless for a period of time in his life, and he's just living in God's glory, returning the favor of his life back to kids in his backyard who need it. And he's even done events with me in the Boston area. I mean, he had never been to Boston until we met each other. So it's just a wonderful thing. If anybody wanted to look up Beverly's Hearty Slice, it is a nonprofit. They take charitable contributions from individuals, from corporations, and 100% of the money goes towards helping kids. I mean, Travis has 3 other jobs that he gets income from. This is not the place he's getting income from.
And Mark, thank you for bringing that up. And we'll put a link in the show notes and in the description for those of you who want to check it out. Mark, I'm super happy you actually brought that up. If you have a few more minutes, I'd love to actually just talk a little bit about this idea of impact. You're impacting people in the healthcare world. You're impacting the balance sheets of entrepreneurs. You're impacting the lives of actually the people who work for those entrepreneurs who are willing to actually take control. But you're also willing to drive impact outside of that. And why do you feel like that? Well, actually, I'm gonna back up. I feel like that has been part of your unfair advantage, is how you are approaching life. Because 16 days, had no idea. So 16 Days is the charity that my wife and I started. Had no idea that you had a NICU event. But I feel like, Mark, you talk about this as an energy game, and that you just sense energies. You met Travis at an airport. In an airport. Why do you feel like giving is such a leading indicator of the success that you've had?
My wife would say the number one reason she married me is because I have a big heart. So I'll just use that as a way to answer your question, that I I just care. I don't know where it comes from. I don't really care where it comes from. I'm glad I'm built that way, that I actually care, right? And I'll say it this way. There are a lot of things I don't give a shit about, like people's opinions of what I do. I don't really care about. If you know me, you know I don't really give a shit. If you're a friend of mine, you want to tell me how something I said or did impacts you, sure, I'll listen. Doesn't mean I'm going to do what you say, didn't land right with you, but I'll certainly listen to you. But for me, it's finding a way to give back because I'm such a blessed human being. I have my health. I have an amazing woman at my side. I have 3 grown children who are healthy and, moving into their own. I get to help my wife with my bonus son. He's not my kid. I'm not his dad. He's got a great dad. I have a great son, but it gives me a chance to, to help him along. It's just who I am. It's the fabric of who Mark Gaunya is. I don't know how to be another way. Right? I don't know how not to care about things that I care about. How when I come across somebody to know that our interaction may be on the reason that you smile today. In fact, when I picked up my jet ski, this was last year. I've been wanting a jet ski for a long time. But I had a guy pick me up at my house to bring me to the jet ski boat ramp. And turns out after talking to him, he's a retired police detective. And we got into a really serious conversation. He told me about some of the painful things that he had to witness as a policeman. And he was having a rough time of it. I didn't know that when he picked me up. And he literally embraced me. We were crying together on a boat ramp when he's trying to give me my jet ski. He goes, I gave him $100 bill. I'm like, I do this random act of kindness thing when I meet people that, I don't know, something tells me to pull out a bill and give it to you. So I'm giving you $100 bill so that you can go take your wife, because he was saying how they were having a tough time. He just started crying. And he hugged me and he's like, you don't know me, I don't know you, but I've been having a really tough time of it. And now I can take my wife to dinner this weekend. Like you have no idea what this means. And I'm sitting there like, okay, I just gave you $100. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but the impact it had on him and the moment we shared together, I mean, I'm crying, Ben, with a guy I don't even know and who's having a tough day, and we all have it. But for me, like when I walked away from that, I'm like, that's what living life is all about for me. Yeah, if I can make an impact in somebody's life and put a smile on their face to help them believe something they didn't think was possible is possible, right? To overcome adversity and to then see them winning and standing on a podium somewhere, that is like the coolest freaking thing, I think. And I'm just sharing a story with you about a guy on a boat ramp. But at that point in time, I guess my point of the story is I didn't have to talk to him. I could have just taken the ride in the pickup truck and not said a damn thing to him. I'm just about getting my jet ski and I'm going to move about my day. But I decided to ask him how he's doing. Like, hey, what's going on? Like, what's your story? Like, you just pick up people all day long and drop them off their boats? And he started laughing. He's like, no. And he goes, and before I did this, I was a cop for 30 years or 35 years. And people don't know that about me. And like, he was really having a tough time of it. And just to be there and to listen and to be present and to, I don't know, commiserate with the guy. And like, we all have bad days. And I hope this puts a smile on your face, because you're giving me my jet ski and I've been waiting for this for a long time. So you're putting a smile on my face. Can I put one on your face? Can we all just be kind, Ben? That's all I want. Can we just be kind to each other?
And how much did that cost you to just be kind?
0 on the kindness part. I gave him $100 because I wanted him and his wife to have a nice night out. But if I never gave him any money, he still would have embraced me. He still would have been crying. It wasn't about the $100. It was about somebody could listen to him and hear him and tell him it's going to be okay, man. It's going to be okay.
Oof, that's beautiful. You're a principled man. And I am super grateful that you shared that story. And I think it's something that we all can aspire to, is just be kind. It costs you nothing.
Be present and listen and I think Stephen Covey framed it best. Be interested before you're interesting. Be interested. I always tell my kids this, like, no one wants to hear about you until you understand about them. So you like to hear somebody drone on and on? No, Dad. I'm like, okay. So be interested. The person has a story. Like, be interested in the story. And then you can talk about you. And then that person will be like, wow, that felt really different talking to that person. You know why? Because you didn't make it about you. That's why you and I get along, because you're the same kind of guy.
Yeah. It's a battle of, let's talk about you, Mark. And you're like, no, let's talk about you, Ben.
Let's talk about you, Ben. That's right. I'm interested in hearing about you.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I'm super grateful that our audience got to know a little bit more about you. Again, you're a principled man. I loved having you on. You're a great storyteller. It's clear the fact that you lead with principles. It's about impact. It's about outcomes, heart-driven leadership, and just kindness. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. And hey, one of the things I like to do, I always like to leave our audience with a last word from you. What's the last word that you want to share with our audience?
I really did say it towards the end of our conversation, that everything that you do in life, in my view, can have a foundation of kindness. Your business can be kind. The charitable work you do can be kind. When you're out having a good time with your friends and family, you can be kind. That doesn't mean I'm not competitive. I am competitive. I love competing, but it also means shaking your hand and looking you in the eye and say, you got me today, Ben. I'll see you next time we play. And just be kind. So to me, just be kind and everything's going to be okay, right? Take a breath. Everything will be okay. It doesn't rain forever, Ben. I often say that too. It feels like it when it's raining, doesn't it? It feels like it's never going to end, but the sun will come out. You just got to endure.
Mark, if people want to find more about you, they want to know when your book's coming out, they want to know more about this Captivated Health, they want to know more about new projects you're working on, your socials, where can they find you?
Yeah, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. Professionally, that's where I house all of my information. I'm on other socials too. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but LinkedIn is my professional. It's my name. So I'm Markgaunya. You can easily find me on LinkedIn. I'm a power user of LinkedIn, and that's where I house a lot of my professional stuff in terms of what I put out to the world. If you want to email me directly, you could email me at mark@Borislow. That's BORIS as in Steve, LOW. So borislow.com, mark@borislow.com.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to having you back.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.